Fulcha Gehayden. Welcome back, friends, from this fantastic life. We just returned from a 23-day trip to Ireland and Scotland. In this episode, we'll be showing you the Ireland portion of that trip. And at the very end, I'll talk a little bit about how I plan these trips and get them to come off so smoothly. I could be a travel planner in the future. So welcome to Ireland and enjoy today's episode. Please click on that subscribe button at the lower right hand corner of your screen if you're new to this channel or if you've been following along but haven't subscribed yet. We really need to reach 1,000 subscribers and we're only about a third of the way there right now. So I'd really appreciate if you do that. Here's a map of our planned itinerary, and then I have a full documented hike itinerary with photos and descriptions of things that'll help us on our trip as we travel day to day through Ireland. And we're off to Ireland, departing on Sunday evening, July the 16th from Philadelphia at 5:52 a.m. and arriving in Dublin the next morning at 5:35 a.m. where we met our college friend Chrissy, who flew directly from Newark to join us here. We began our trip in Dublin, the capital of Ireland, spending 2 days there before heading out on our grand tour of the country of Ireland. So we took the express bus downtown and left our bags at our hotel here at the Fitzsimon Temple Bar Hotel. And then we walked to the nearby Penny Bridge, our hotel being centrally located, and past City Hall, formerly the Royal Exchange, to Dublin Castle. Dublin Castle has stood on the site since the days of King John, the first Lord of Ireland in the 18th century, and currently houses the seat of the British government's administration in Ireland. Our next stop was at St. Patrick's Park and St. Patrick's Cathedral, which was founded in 1191 as a Roman Catholic cathedral and was built on the site where St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, who was a Christian missionary and bishop, baptized people in the well nearby in the 5th century. St. Patrick, of course, died on March the 17th, although we don't know the year, and hence St. Patrick's Day. Inside the cathedral are some notable items, including a bust and epitaph and death mask of Jonathan Swift, author of Gulliver's Travels, who was the dean here from 1713 to 1745. This is the famous Penny Bridge over the River Liffey in Dublin. It was built in 1816 by William Walsh, who was given the option of extracting a halfpenny toll from anyone crossing it for 100 years. Next, we went inside Christ Church Cathedral, or the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity, which was founded in the 11th century by a Viking king named Sihtric Silkenbeard. Can't make this up. and rebuilt in the late 12th century by the Norman invader of Ireland named Strongbow, whose tomb is inside. Some other items in the church are the heart-shaped box containing a preserved heart from 1180 of Lawrence O'Toole, the Archbishop, and a mummified remains of a cat and mouse that were found in the organ pipes.
So this manuscript here is from the 13th century, and it's open at a copy of the most famous legal document of the world, the Magna Carta.
No visit to Dublin is complete without a visit to Trinity College, which was founded in 1592 by Queen Elizabeth I. Make sure you get a student tour of the campus.
So, the Graduates Memorial Building was named in honor of the Trinity students who served in the Boer Wars in South Africa, and it hosts our debating society. It's free on campus. We have the Philosophical Society, or the Historical Society, or and the Theological Society, or
Inside the Trinity College Library is the famous Book of Kells, containing the 4 Gospels of the New Testament. They are vividly illustrated in the style of insular illumination and using Western calligraphy. These Gospels were created by Columban monks around 800 AD. Also, check out the long room in the old library, which also contains marble busts of famous philosophers, scientists, and writers, including the physicist Isaac Newton and my favorite chemist, Robert Boyle and Rosalind Franklin. There's also a gold harp called Brian Boru's harp, and there's an early edition of Milton's Paradise Lost. After checking into our hotel, we walked up Grafton Street, one of the principal shopping streets in Dublin, listening to the buskers.
You'll never see whatever common people see, never feel like common people. You'll never watch your life slide out of you and dance and drink and screw, because there's nothing else to do.
Then we walked to St. Stephen's Green through Fuseliers Arch and saw monuments to the famine and to William Yeats, a poet. After walking back down Grafton Street to the Ha'penny Bridge in the Temple Bar District, we walked over to the other side of the River Liffey and saw the O'Connell Monument, as well as the O'Connell Bridge. Finally, we spent some time inside the Temple Bar listening to the Celtic music. So that was our first day, 21,686 steps, 9.8 miles. And remember, we were arriving at 5 in the morning after only about 2 hours of sleep on the airplane. So it's always good to adjust to the new time zone right off the bat. Day 2 was a rainy day, so we had planned some museum things today. Some of the treasures found in the National Museum include a bunch of gold artifacts, the Lismore crozier, the Tara brooch, and an old script of Ogham on vellum. Then we went to the Natural History Museum and we saw a skeleton of red deer and a bunch of other animals. It was very packed in there because it was a weekend and it was a rainy day. Next, we went to the National Gallery of Art, where we saw exhibits by Irish painters, as well as a Vermeer and a Rembrandt. In the afternoon, we took the express bus back to the airport, and we picked up our rental car. Then we drove south from Dublin to Glendalough, and the monastery there, in the middle of the Wicklow Mountains National Park. A beautiful and peaceful, serene area at Glendalough in the Wicklow Mountains has been a place of pilgrimage since the 6th century, when St. Kevin lived there as a hermit and established a monastery. There's been a monastic city there ever since. Finally, we ended day 2 of our trip to Ireland in the town of Kilkenny, where we stayed in a youth hostel. After checking in and getting dinner, we walked the streets of the town and along the water there to see the castle. On the morning of the 3rd day of our trip, we woke up early in Kilkenny, and Jessica and I walked along the Moher River in order to see the castle in the early morning light. I was able to fly the drone up at this hour, and then later we retrieved Chrissy and we had a tour of the castle. The castle was founded soon after the Norman conquest of Ireland by Strongbow and rebuilt in 1260 in order to defend a ford in the River Nore. It was owned by the Butler family for several generations and is currently remodeled in the Victorian style. After walking down from the castle through town and past Market Cross with the colorful umbrellas, we then toured St. Canice's Cathedral, which also dates from the 13th century and is the second longest cathedral in Ireland. It stands on the site of an early monastery founded by St. Canice in the 6th century. You're able to climb the round tower, which dates from the 9th century, for surrounding views of the countryside. We then drove on to the Rock of Cashel. It is here where legend says that St. Patrick banished Satan from a cave, with the rock landing here in Cashel. The round tower on this site dates from 1100. Cormac's Chapel was built in 1134, and the main cathedral was built between 1235 and 1270. Not too far away from the Rock of Cashel lies Hore Abbey, which are the remains of a ruined Cistercian monastery dating to 1269. Again, I was able to fly the drone here and get some nice views of the Abbey without too many people in it, looking back up at the Rock of Cashel on the hillside.
My young love said to me, my mother won't mind, and my father won't spite you for your lack of kind. And she stepped away from me, and this she did say, it will not be long, love, till our wedding day. She stepped away from me.
Our third stop of the third day was at Blarney Castle and Blarney House. The castle was built in 1210, destroyed in 1446, and later rebuilt. At the top of the castle, there's the Stone of Eloquence, better known as the Blarney Stone, where tourists can hang upside down over a sheer drop to kiss the stone in order to get the gift of gab. Legend has it that locals like to pee on the stone.
As the swan in the evening moved over the lake, the people were saying that no two were wed, but one has a sorrow that never was said. And I
We concluded our day in Cork, where we stayed at our first Airbnb, and we walked into the town and had dinner to celebrate Chrissy's birthday. On the morning of the fourth day, still in Cork, we went past St. Finbarr's Cathedral and Christ Church. And then we saw the Pope's Quay with the colorful buildings. And St. Anne's Shandon, where you could climb the bell tower and you could even ring the bells for yourself. Our second stop of the day was at Muckross House, which is built as a 19th century Victorian mansion for Henry Arthur Herbert. Actually, it was the fourth house in their family in this area over a 200-year period. It was built on a peninsula between Muckross Lake and Loch Lean. It was renovated by the Herbert family in 1861 for a visit by Queen Victoria. Unfortunately, this caused them to have financial difficulties and they had to sell the house. In 1932, the Burren family gave the house to the country of Ireland, and it was the foundation of the first national park in Ireland called Killarney National Park. You can enjoy views of the lake and the gardens here, and you can also take a 5-mile round-trip hike to the Torque waterfall. Not far from Muckross House is Muckross Abbey, founded in 1448 as a Franciscan friary. The friars were frequently persecuted by Cromwellian forces, and the abbey suffered disrepair. Its most striking feature is the central courtyard, which contains a large yew tree. Not far from Muckross Abbey and just down the street from the town of Killarney is Ross Castle, a 15th century tower castle on the edge of Loch Lean in Killarney National Park. After another long day, we settled into our Airbnb at Deer Haven, not far from the town center of Killarney. Beautiful house with a wonderful host, and we had one of our best Airbnb experiences on the entire trip here. Folks, we're only on day 5 of our trip and the best bit is just ahead. Today we're going to see the Ring of Kerry. You should travel this in a counterclockwise motion in order to avoid the tour buses so you don't have to pass them head-on on these narrow roads. So we started at Portmagee and we crossed over to Valentia Island where we saw the Valentia Island Lighthouse and stopped for views at the Skellig Experience. Then we climbed up Bray's Head for views of the Skelligs, including Skellig Michael, where the Star Wars film Last of the Jedi was filmed. And finally, we drove to the nearby Kerry Cliffs. For €5 each, you can park here and walk up the steep incline to see not only the cliffs, but also some ancient prehistoric Neolithic beehive huts, alpacas, cows, and they also have a cafe there. You hike up this hill to the Kerry Cliffs, which are 1,000-foot high cliffs above the Atlantic Ocean that were formed in the desert over 400 million years ago, and you are just blown away by the scenery. No pun intended. Continuing on our drive around the Ring of Kerry, which is part of the Wild Atlantic Way, we stopped at the Ballinskellick's beach to see McCarthy Castle. Ironically, there was also a sandcastle built here in the foreground, which is kind of cool. Continuing in our counterclockwise fashion, we arrived at the town of Sneen, and here we decided to take the shortcut along with many of the tour buses through Mall's Gap. Driving through the mountains inland, you can go to a viewpoint called Ladies View, which is actually on the backside of Killarney National Park. After completing our loop of the Ring of Kerry, we then headed north past Tralee to the Shannon Ferry. We crossed over the Shannon Ferry into County Clare, and then we drove to our destination for today, which was in the town of Tulloch. The house where we stayed on Tulloch for 3 nights was the home of a friend of Chrissy's family. And one of their relatives, John, showed us around on day 6. This was actually a flex day that we had. We were going to go to the Dingle Peninsula, but the weather was bad, and we had a flex day scheduled for day 7, so we just switched those days. And we went with John, and he showed us around the Kilkee cliffs. While the Kilkee cliffs are not as well known as the Ring of Kerry cliffs or the cliffs of Moher, they're equally beautiful, and it's completely free to go see them, and you're also allowed to fly your drone there, which is a plus. After a rainy morning of sightseeing, we then joined John and his wife Phyllis at the Long Dock in Carrigaholt for a beautiful lunch. Well, folks, it's hard to believe we haven't even been in Ireland for a week yet. And here we are on day 7, heading out, backtracking down to past Tralee to the Dingle Peninsula. First stop was at Inch Beach, which is popular among kite surfers. The Dingle Peninsula is renowned for its beautiful green colors, and here was no exception, as I was able to fly the drone up and out toward the Atlantic Ocean. Here's Jessica eating her Pringle and Dingle. A quick stop at Dinguaire Castle where the sheep actually jumped right over Chrissy's head. Driving clockwise on Aasleigh Head Drive around the Dingle Peninsula, we arrived at the beehive huts, which are over 1,000 years old and were used by the monks. These are also featured in the Star Wars movie, The Last of the Jedi. Just a little off of Aasleigh Head Drive are the ruins of corbelled stone structures from early Christian pilgrims known as the Riask monastic settlement. At the westernmost tip of the Dingle Peninsula lies the Gallerus Oratory, which looks like an upturned boat. It's a church that was believed to have been built in the 12th century. However, others believe it may have been built later. It's a fine example of a corbel vaulted roof. We concluded our day by ducking into a pub in order to watch the finals of the hurling championship as the locals Limerick beat Kilkenny. Then we returned to the house in Tulloch for our last night and watched an amazingly beautiful sunset over the Atlantic Ocean. They say that the early bird gets the worm, and that was true in today's case. We get up at 5:30 and drove to the cliffs of Moher, getting there around 7 o'clock, and the official visitor center doesn't open until 8 o'clock, so we were able to park in the car park for free, walk around with hardly any other tourists there, maybe 2 or 3 other people, and see the whole place, had it to ourselves, and then get out of the car park by 8 o'clock, didn't have to pay a single cent. These 2 castles are just past the cliffs of Moher. Burren National Park is one of 6 national parks in Ireland. It covers a small part of the karst landscape in County Clare on the western coast. We just happened to accidentally stumble upon Dunguaire Castle along our drive. It was mobbed with tourists. Lots of tour buses came here, and we were able to fly the drone in between visitors from one bus trip to the next bus trip. Beautiful setting on Galway Bay near the town of Connemara. This is the famous Poulnabrone Dolmen, or Portal Tomb, in Burren National Park. It dates to the Neolithic period, probably between 4200 BC and 2900 BC. making it even older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza. We finished out the day in Galway, walking along the River Corrib. We first stopped at the Cathedral of Our Lady Assumed into Heaven in St. Nicholas, commonly known as the Galway Cathedral, which was completed only in 1965. Inside, you don't want to miss the mosaic tile of JFK. The Galway International Arts Festival was going on while we were visiting, and it was just a cool vibe to walk around Ayr Square, get some ice cream at Murphy's, and then walk down Shop Street back to the River Corrib. Well, it's day 9. Time is flying in our trip to Ireland. We're almost done. We visited the 4th national park on our trip out of 6 in Ireland today at Connemara National Park, and I believe this is definitely the most beautiful one. Located in Connemara National Park is Kylemore Abbey, a Benedictine monastery and school founded in 1920 on the former grounds of the Killarney Castle, which was built in 1868 for Mitchell and Margaret Henry, whose mausoleum is on the site. There's also a Gothic church here and a beautiful Victorian walled garden. also stopped at Aasleigh Falls, where I was able to fly the drone up the water and get some beautiful shots. We concluded our day in the town of Sligo, where we had a wonderful dinner, the best dinner that we had in the entire trip, at a cool restaurant called Hook. We just love the vibe here, right down to the playlist and the walls and decorations inside. And we had the most amazing bruschetta with goat cheese and some fish tacos, and then lovely hooked donuts for dessert with ice cream and whipped cream. We woke up early on day 10 because rain was forecast later in the morning, so we drove to Glenveagh National Park, the 5th national park we've seen in Ireland, and walked along the water's edge to the castle there, arriving just as the castle opened. It was about an hour-long walk, maybe 2.5 miles long. We explored the castle and the gardens there, and then we took the shuttle bus back to the visitor center parking lot. Here we drove into Northern Ireland and stopped on the northernmost coast near the Dark Hedges estate. You can walk down this road on a private estate here that's completely lined with beech trees that are over 100 years old, and just amazing setting, just beautiful for photography. This scene was filmed in the Game of Thrones, and it's just an enjoyable place to spend an afternoon. Well, it's our final day in Ireland, and here we are on the northernmost coast of Northern Ireland at the Giant's Causeway. Again, getting up early is the key. We got here around 7 o'clock in the morning before the place opened, and we were able to walk through the tunnel where the tour bus usually takes people down to the Giant's Causeway at the bottom of the hill here. And we were among one of only 2 other people that were there at this hour of the day. And you could walk along all these basalt columns and just admire the wonderful scenery. Had the place all to ourselves. It was just stopped raining. It was a beautiful way to end our trip. Then it was on the long drive back from Northern Ireland back to Dublin, with one final stop in Belfast. Here we had a quick tour of Queen's College, and then we walked around the Botanic Gardens before having our final lunch, fried mushroom balls and garlic bread, soda bread at Maggie May's. And so we say goodbye to Ireland. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click the subscribe button, the little band icon in the lower right hand corner of your screen there. We really need subscribers. And click the notifications bell, because pretty soon we're going to have the follow-up to our trip of Ireland, which is a vacation in Scotland. So in this segment, I'm going to tell you about how I plan your do-it-yourself travel tips. So the first thing I do is I go on YouTube after I've determined what destination I want to go to, and I search the top 10s. So I generally like to go to Planetware for top 10. So I'll go to top 10 things to see in Ireland and on Planetware, and then I'll check other websites as well. I'll see what YouTubers have put up. And then once I've zeroed in on particular cities, I'll do like top 10 Dublin, etc. And I'll put all of these places, after researching them, all the places I want to see, after searching on Google Images to get pictures of them to see whether I want to see them or not, and researching a little bit of history on Wikipedia. I'll make myself a Google map. So I'll have a saved Google map where I put little pin drops on all the places that I might want to see. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to determine how much time I have on my vacation. So let's say I have 2 weeks to see Ireland, a week to see Scotland or something like that. And I'll prioritize which things I want to see. And I'll then connect them on a map. I'll get myself a real paper map, as well as using the Google Maps feature. And I use National Geographic paper maps. I find them very definitive and descriptive. And I'll plan myself a route and map out a day-by-day basic itinerary, trying not to travel like more than 3 hours of driving time per day. I also try to build in a day of flexibility in case of bad weather or in case something goes wrong. I have like what I call a flex day built into my calendar. And even on that flex day, I'll have like options of what to do and what to see in the event that I don't need the flex day, so that I'm never unprepared when I go on these trips. I'm always completely prepared for any additional sites around the area. If I have 2 major sites I want to see that day, I'll have a 3rd and a 4th on my list just in case I get through those first 2 easily. The next thing I want to do is I want to try to avoid travel to the real touristy spots like the Cliffs of Moher, etc. on a weekend. I'll try to travel to these on a weekday so that it's not quite as busy. After that, after I have my basic itinerary, then I'm going to start to book my flights and my rental car and my hotels. For flights, I usually use Aer Lingus if I'm flying over to Ireland because it's cheapest. In this case though, we actually used American Airlines for our flight. Then I'll book my rental car. My preferred rental car company is Enterprise. I've had real good experiences with them in the past, and even on this trip, I returned the car a couple hours early and they credited me for a day off my bill, which was very nice of them. Then I'll book where I want to stay. Now I'd like a mix of hotels, so I'll go on the booking.com site to see what hotels are in the area. So you can just click on, say, Dublin, and then do a search for hotels, and it'll pop up the hotels and their prices. And I always try to find something that's center city, so it's downtown, easy for me to walk to the major sites, so I don't have to take a car to those sites. And then if there's nothing suitable in terms of hotels, I'll also go on Airbnb. This is the first trip that I tried Airbnb, and I really had some good experiences with it. And we've even stayed at hostels, so a hostel might be the cheapest option, and the hostels are generally quite nice. So these are I like the mix of different accommodations as well. Staying in somebody's home and getting that personal feel, or having the assuredness of a hotel with its amenities, and the cheapness of hostels, and etc. I like the mix of all the different kinds of accommodations. The next tip that I have for you is to pack incredibly light. So I always plan to take just a carry-on size suitcase that you can fit in the overhead bin, and of course my personal item where I keep my computer supplies and camera supplies, medicines, etc. This way you're not always toting around something really heavy. You don't need it. Okay, you don't want to be dragging it around the city and on buses and up and down stairs and through airport terminals, etc. Just take as light as you want. So I had in this trip for 23 days, I had 2 long sleeve shirts, I had a sweatshirt, I had a couple short sleeve shirts, I had 1 pair of shorts, I had 2 extra pairs of pants besides the jeans that I was wearing. I had a jacket, which I wore on the plane, and a rain jacket instead of an umbrella. And then I had, enough socks and underwear so that maybe I could wear the same socks and underwear for 3 days in a row or something like that. And I found that this was more than enough. You don't need to take everything with you. And in fact, it's not a third world country. If you need to, you can go use a laundromat, or you can buy something that you need. My next tip is always to make sure that you have a water bottle with you and a snack, because you never know when you're going to get hungry, if you're stuck on the road, or if you're out on a hike and you need some extra energy. Always have a snack on hand and a water bottle. In fact, I packed the kind of water bottle this time where you have like a filter on it. It's like a squeezy, soft plastic bottle that you would take on a hike, so that if you're out on a hike, you could always fill it with stream water and drink through the filter and not have any problems. Okay. Next tip I have is, when you're in a foreign country, don't be an American. Don't wear shirts that have logos on, stuff like that. Try to blend in with the culture. If it's a foreign language, try to learn a little bit to speak that foreign language. Always have a smile and be friendly and polite to others. Don't be like a typical arrogant American, and eat like the country that you're in too. Try new kinds of foods, new beers, new wines, etc. Try to fit in with the culture. One of my favorite things I like to do when I go to a museum, or if I'm in a bed and breakfast, is I ask the host or somebody that's in charge, I ask them, what are the top 2 or 3 things that I have to see while I'm here? I'm only here for a couple hours or for half a day or what have you. What are the things that I can't miss? And the locals always love to share that information with you, and you can get some really good insider tips and go see places that are off the beaten path. So these are my tips. Also, I have another tip about money. Okay, so in this trip, for example, Ireland uses the euro, but Northern Ireland and Great Britain uses the pound sterling. And so what you want to do is, when you get to the airport or when you first enter the country, go to the ATM, make sure you let your bank know before your trip that you're going to be in a foreign country, and take out a couple $100 in cash in the currency of the foreign country, euros, pounds in this case, and just have that for spending money, because out in the rural areas, a lot of places aren't going to take credit. And when you do use your credit card and you're given the option to take the money in, say, euros versus in dollars, always choose the euros, because you're going to have a better conversion rate that way rather than choosing the dollars. And my last tip is get up early. Okay, the way I figure it is, you're spending probably $300 a day minimum on a trip like this, when you average in rental car and airfare and hotel accommodations, $300 a day is a lot of money in my opinion. And so you want to maximize what you see in that day. You don't want to have a lot of downtime. So have a good plan and then get up early in the morning. And get out there before the tourist buses and see these sites before things open. I love to get up in a city and walk. Okay? The best way to see a city is to walk around it, not to take a tour bus, a hop on, hop off bus, not to take a taxi, but to walk the streets and get a good orientation for the city as soon as you get there. And just duck into narrow alleyways and see what's there. And getting up early and seeing this, not necessarily the sunrise, but getting up early enough in the day that there aren't a whole lot of people out and about and it's not real crowded. You kind of have the place to yourself. It's really great for photography. And you have a nice lighting as well as pictures without too many people in them. For example, on this trip, we got up really early and drove to the Cliffs of Moher and we arrived there around 7 o'clock. It doesn't open until 8 o'clock. So we could park in the car park and didn't have to worry about the gate because it wasn't in service yet. And we could walk up to the park, see the cliffs, even fly the drone a little bit because there's nobody else around. And we were out of there by 8 o'clock and beat all the tourists, all the tour buses. There were maybe 2 or 3 other people up there with us. We had the Cliffs of Moher to ourselves and beautiful early morning lighting. So these are my tips for do-it-yourself travel. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, I encourage you to click the subscribe button for future content. In the next episode, we'll be continuing our trip and I'll have the best of Scotland. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate your support of my channel. Till next time, happy travels.